You have turned to Illegal Curve Hockey as your destination for the latest news, audio, and analysis regarding the Winnipeg Jets, Manitoba Moose, and all things hockey in Manitoba. Join Dave Manu, Ezra Ginsburg, and Drew Mandel as a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good afternoon, Winnipeg. Good afternoon, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live at Cityplace in downtown Winnipeg and online on our social media platforms, we say good afternoon, universe, and welcome to a special game day edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Manouk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel, here for the next 60 minutes, getting you set for this evening's Jets Bruins game in downtown Winnipeg. We're thrilled to be here at Cityplace like we are every month, bringing you the latest on the Winnipeg Jets, bringing you the latest on tonight's contest against the Bruins as the Jets look to get back to winning ways on home ice, having dropped their last two games in downtown Winnipeg. A little bit of struggles as of late, as we know about the Winnipeg Jets, so the Jets looking to redeem themselves later on tonight against the Bruins. Gentlemen, good to see you both on this afternoon edition of the program. Changes galore for the Winnipeg Jets. Well, maybe not galore, but a few changes up front for the Winnipeg Jets. We'll delve in deep into that. Changes on the back end as well as we head into this original six contest against an original six opponent at the very least. Nice to see you guys on this Tuesday afternoon.
Nice to see you boys as well. Always fun to do the show here at Cityplace. There's always an extra special buzz in the air when there's an original six team.
It's true.
By the way, I love that you're rocking an old school IC Polo. Like, we got those like a long time ago. Like, those are a good like 10 or 12 years old. So mine doesn't fit anymore. That's why I don't wear mine. I was a lighter man when we got those.
It's too. I thought you were going to say it's too big on you now. It's too small. That's the opposite problem.
No keto diet for me, unfortunately. But yeah, I like it. Looks good on you, Drew.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, guys, some changes to talk about. Maybe we should just throw right to Dave M, because he's fresh from Jets practice at Canada Life Center.
Sprinting into the building.
Yeah, Dave just sat down
under
about
the wire
3 minutes ago. So, Dave, maybe we should just go to you for changes, because obviously Brad Lambert's out, and we know somebody's coming in, right?
Yeah, Nikita Chibrikov will be playing his second NHL game. He, of course, made his debut with Brad Lambert last season in that game against the Canucks. And he
had an assist?
Had a
goal.
He
had a goal.
Lambert
had the assist.
Oh, right. That's right. Yeah.
So he's already got the goal under his belt. Now maybe he'll try and get an assist to add to his goal total. But look, he's excited, and with good reason. And Scott O'Neill talked about it from the Matt Frost Media Center about 25 minutes ago. Just this idea of platooning these guys, or a rotation for these young guys. He wanted to see both of them, and this affords him the opportunity. And it was interesting because his words about Nikolai Ehlers yesterday, the day before, sorry, it was after Sunday night's game, that we talked about a bit on the pregame show when we got the extended availability with the players, and Scott O'Neill, because they all spoke from the Matt Frost Media Center, which was a bit unusual, was the fact that I don't anticipate that Nikolai Ehlers is going to be back anytime soon. He skated on his own this morning before morning skate got underway.
Right, which is a good sign.
No, it's a good sign, of course, but like Scott O'Neill said, that was his first time on the ice. So you're not anticipating that this is a quick fix with Nikolai Ehlers or with Nikita Chibrikov coming up. So my suspicion is you're going to see Nikita Chibrikov kind of get this run of games similar to Lambert. Lambert played 4 in a row. Now you're going to have Nikita Chibrikov probably get the 3 more games on this homestand. I can't predict it 100%, but that would be my conjecture. And you get him those games, and you get him some time under his belt to kind of, and the message from Scott O'Neill to Brad Lambert when he was sent down was, look, I don't know if I'm going to see you in a few weeks, or he said January 1st or in March, but you've done some good things here, and you can build on that down with the Moose. Similar, again, this is going to be the message to Nikita Chibrikov when he eventually gets reassigned.
I can't help but wonder, and we'll delve deep into the lines coming up here, throughout the course of the next hour. I can't help but wonder that if Lambert doesn't take that offensive zone high sticking penalty, if this change actually does occur. Remember, he takes that offensive zone penalty against the Blue Jackets on Sunday, and then they score on the ensuing power play that ties the game at 1, and then of course the Blue Jackets go on to win by everyone's favorite score and the only score the Jets
4-1.
know how to play games on, 4-1. I can't help
What is
but
that, like 15 times now?
It's like
getting,
8 out
it's getting a little bit creepy.
I think it's 8 out of the last 14 games, Ezzy. Because
Yeah, it's-
remember, it
it's
didn't
very
happen.
weird.
Didn't happen in October. It was only November and December games in which it's happened.
Yeah, it's definitely a statistical anomaly that all those games have been 4-1 games, as of late. Anyways, I know that they're saying all the good things, and as you would expect, and I wouldn't expect that, Scott O'Neill is going to come out and say, yeah, Brad Lambert got sent down because he took a careless penalty, but I can't help but wonder if that's a bit of a factor, in the decision.
Could be for sure.
Certainly, you do need, you're obviously with young players, you're trying to, instill in them that sense of accountability and that sense of, you can't afford any sort of slippage because the margins for victory for most of these games and most of the teams you're playing against are so narrow that one bad penalty, one careless penalty can end up in the back of your net, and lo and behold, all of a sudden it's a 1-1 game as it was on Sunday. Nonetheless, they said the right things, and Lambert will go back with the Moose now, and they're heading, I think you said, to Calgary to play the Wranglers tonight. So he'll have some opportunity to get some reps in with the Manitoba Moose, and he knows that he's had that taste of the NHL action this year, and his goal and his driving force has to be to get back up here, and he's well aware of all that. But it is a great opportunity for Nikita Chibrikov to show up and make an impact, maybe even make more of an impact than Brad Lambert did in his stint in Winnipeg.
Right, and I'll let Dave M get in here in a second because obviously he's watched Chibrikov more than I think anybody else in the city, maybe with the exception of the Moose coaching staff. But I think there's a lot of Jets fans that are excited about Chibrikov because of the fact that he's got a very well-rounded game, a versatile game. He plays with an edge, right? Mm-hmm. He's kind of reminds you a little bit, Dave, of like an Alexei Kovalev, right? Like he's got, I'm not saying that his skill level is that, or he projects to be that at the NHL level.
Right.
But if you remember, Kovalev was a guy.
That's a heck of a reference,
Well,
Ezzy.
but Kovalev he had an edge to his game,
Yeah,
and that's kind of what I'm getting to here with Chibrikov. Like Chibrikov's not the biggest guy. Like,
No.
He's kind of an average size forward, or maybe even a little bit below average size forward. And we'd have to ask James Myrtle for his average height and average weight for each NHL team. But the reality is he has a physical edge to his game, and I think, look, just quickly on Brad Lambert, I think we saw glimpses of what Brad Lambert can do at the NHL level, right? You see him on the zone entries, you see the skill, the skating, everything like that. But also, I think, he got a little bit lost at times in the games, the 4 games that he was in with the Jets, and that's to be expected, right? This is his first taste of NHL action, right? So I think you're adding a different dynamic by sending Lambert down and then having Chibrikov on your second line, right? And let's be honest, guys, that second line needs to get going for the Jets, and it wasn't with Brad Lambert. And again, I think Brad Lambert has a bright future in the NHL, but I think right now is the time to experiment. This is the time to see what you've got with these guys and what works.
I don't have a problem with the experimental idea, but I look at that second line right now and I wonder, who's the driver of that line? You look at it, you got Cole Perfetti, you got Vlad Namestnikov, and you got now Nikita Chibrikov.
I see right now, I don't think there is.
That's the big problem.
That's the thing with this line is that you put Brad Lambert in there, Dave, and obviously we talked about it. You're putting in a highly skilled forward who's got the wheels, and it just didn't quite work. And that was my concern by putting Brad Lambert in as the second line center without having played a lot with these guys, right? That was my concern. And again, I'm not saying, I told you so,
right?
But I'm just saying that, that was a concern of mine when they put Lambert in, as opposed to kind of insulating him and playing him on the fourth line, right?
Yeah.
And I have no problem with doing that, but I think it didn't work. So now you're trying a different element. Nemesnikov's going to go back to center,
right?
His usual position there. And Cole Perfetti, guys, he's got to get going. He just offensively, he's an offensive player. That's his game. They got to get him going. And I think it's going to be interesting because Chibrikov, Nemesnikov, Perfetti, it's an interesting line, right?
Not a speed line.
It's not a speed line, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what this line can do together for the first time together.
I'm a little sorry, Dave. I'm a little surprised that they didn't use this opportunity of calling up Chibrikov to maybe mix up that top 6 a little bit more. Because I'm not entirely certain, and I'm happy to be proven wrong at the end of tonight's game or at the end of this homestand. I'm not entirely certain why this sort of moving Lambert out and bringing Chibrikov in is going to result in more success for that second line.
I'll tell you what the coaching staff said today.
Please.
And they said that Scott Arniel feels that Vlad Nemestikov was having success up the middle. And so I think Brad Lambert's 20 years old. Let's not lose sight of the fact that he's 20 years old.
Right.
He's played pro in North America for 2 seasons now. And so, or this is really his second full season, I should say, playing pro. Or now it's starting his third, sorry. But the point is that he's a young guy. He's not a guy who's played in the, second actually. It's only his second full season. But the point is...
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer. My point, though, is that you've got a guy who is trying to play pro in the NHL at center, second line center. That's a huge ask. And I agree with Ez. You do wonder why, people say, oh, well, the coaching staff wanted a second line guy or a top 6 guy in the NHL to be replaced by a top 6 guy in the AHL. It wasn't just the idea of moving, okay, 4th line guy moves up, and then you bring up a guy from the Moose and he goes into that 4th line guy's spot. The idea was that you were going to replace him. The problem is with that theory is that it's a lot to ask Brad Lambert to play center up in the NHL. The face-offs weren't there, and there's a lot of even some of the reads are different, right? And obviously a lot quicker.
Yeah. It's a big hill to climb. There's no question about that.
It's a big hill to climb. So Nikita Chibrikov, it's a lot less of an ask to come in and play wing at the NHL level, right, Ezzy? And so you're going to let, Cole Perfetti goes on the left side. You got Chibrikov on the right side. The right side is where Chibrikov prefers to play anyways. And that's something he talked about. Again, the interviews with Nikita Chibrikov, Scott Arniel, they're all on our YouTube channel, so you guys can watch that after, of course, our broadcast concludes. And Adam Lowry as well spoke this morning. But I just think that it's a lot easier of Chibrikov to come in and make an impact. His game's also different. As he said, he plays, that's the word I would use, bite. He's a tenacious player. He gets under guys' skin.
And what was missing against the Columbus Blue Jackets guys?
Right.
Yeah. Right. Like I don't think this is a coincidence that was
right.
Let's call it a lackluster performance against the Blue Jackets. And
the Blue Jackets
I
challenged the Jets to get to the dirty areas, and the Jets didn't take them up on that challenge. So I don't know if you want to use the word soft or if you want to use the word perimeter, but that's the game the Jets played on Sunday, and they know that that's not their game. Their game is north-south. Their game is winning those battles in the hard-to-get-to areas. Yeah. I'm going to stop saying the word dirty areas because I just find it too repetitive. So, the hard-to-get-to areas, and Boston's going to have the same approach. I mean, that's the MO, for not just against the Jets, but against most teams. It's don't let them get to those, hard-to-get-to areas. Don't let them get to the success zone, if you will. And that's what the front of the net is. If you keep your opponents away from the success zone, and if you get to the success zone, lo and behold, you're likely to have success. So I think the Jets and I think Scott Arniel are looking for Nikita Chibrikov to have that demand and have that drive to get there, whereas they were too perimeter on Sunday, and they've been too perimeter for a lot of the last couple of weeks, I would say.
Well, and especially when you're having trouble scoring 5-on-5 goals, right? We've talked about this, right? Like you would love to have all of these goals on a nightly basis coming from the Scheifele line, coming from the Nemestikov/Perfetti line, whoever happens to be on that line. Obviously, Nemestikov moved from center, but we're going to stick by calling it the Nemestikov line. But certainly, the Lowry line, that's how they get their goals. The 4th line, that's how they get their goals. It's interesting, and I like that David Gustafsson is coming into the lineup. Yeah. Well, but it's Rasmus Kupari, guys. Last year this wasn't the case, but this year Kupari coming out of the lineup, similar to kind of pulling Adam Lowry or Mason Appleton or one of the other regulars out of the lineup, right?
So let me stop you there for a second. We are live here at Cityplace in downtown Winnipeg talking about the Jets and the Bruins, a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We do this monthly, so nice to see so many familiar faces that are joining us on this Tuesday afternoon. But you mentioned that other change, and so let's just take a step back. So that is Rasmus Kupari is coming out of the lineup for the Winnipeg Jets. Very much has been a fixture on that 4th line center spot for the Jets.
We should mention, Drew, sorry, that's his first healthy scratch of the year.
I thought there was an earlier one, like Game 4, Game 5.
Yeah, Gustafsson's played a couple games.
Yeah, that I thought that...
But wasn't Kupari not scratched in those games? I could be wrong about that. Most likely I am wrong about that, to be honest with you.
If history's shown any indicator, it's likely that you're wrong.
We can just say, Drew, it's his first healthy scratch in a long time.
That's fine. That'll grant you. So David Gustafsson is
saved myself.
Yeah, David Gustafsson is going to play up the middle, flanked by Morgan Barron and Alex Iafallo on the Jets' 4th line for today's game. So that's the second change when it comes to the forward group for the Jets. Are you surprised, let's say, about the swap of Gustafsson for Kupari? I don't know that I had a problem necessarily with Kupari's game as of late, but I also don't have the problem with giving David Gustafsson a little bit of some reps, get him some fresh legs in the lineup, but I would have expected it more, Dave, on Sunday against the Blue Jackets on the second half of the back-to-back than tonight against the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I think we all would have, and that's kind of what we talked about over the weekend, right, boys, was that idea that if you're going to get fresh legs in, you'd think you would do it after your third game in 4 days versus tonight where the guys had a full day off yesterday. But at the same time, Scott Arniel was asked about, getting David Gustafsson in the lineup, and he just said, look, I don't want him sitting that long. I want him to be in. It's not that he's been playing poorly, and it's not that Rasmus Kupari is coming out of the lineup because he was playing poorly. He liked his game against Chicago. Just didn't really say anything about anybody's game against the Columbus Blue Jackets.
There wasn't anybody to praise against that game against Columbus.
Well, I thought Eric Comrie, but other than the goalie, but he can't score goals.
Hellebuyck's playing goal tonight.
Yeah, and boys, I'm sure you guys touched on this in the postgame show. It's one thing to put out that type of performance, but it's another thing against your old team, right? Scott Arniel's old team, right? Like, so that bothered him even worse, right?
Well,
yeah,
they won that game in Columbus.
They did torch him. 6-3 in that last game, and Comrie was in net for that one too.
Sure.
But yeah, you're look. I just don't think that they love their game as a collective group. There's only so many changes you can make, and so they'll like you said, they'll bring David Gustafsson in, and it's good to get him reps because you don't want to keep guys on the shelf that long. You want to keep them in, and so Billy Heinola comes back in. He's paired up with Logan Stanley again, and Colin Miller takes a seat.
I would expect, based on the minutes deployment from the forward group for the Jets, that the Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton line is going to get the second most minutes in tonight's game. I know that sometimes it flips and flops, especially when Ehlers is in the lineup on that second line and on the wing spot on the second line. When that line is going, they had been getting some increased minutes. But given the sort of uncertainty that exists around Perfetti and the Mesnikov and Chibrikov, I would expect that Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton are going to get some heavy minutes in tonight's game. And they're a tone-setting line for the Winnipeg Jets. So it's important that they get that line going, that they get them, getting to those, as we say, the success areas, as I'm now billing it. So
I'd say Greasy. I like Greasy.
Greasy's fine as well. Greasy's okay too. But in any event, I would expect to see a lot of the Lowry line in tonight's game, especially with the Winnipeg Jets having last change and getting to be able to dictate the matchups as they want. Just worth noting quickly regarding the Bruins, there was some uncertainty about if David Pastrnak was going to play in tonight's game or not. He is in the Bruins lineup tonight. So he missed practice yesterday. He did skate in the morning skate today. So he will be in the lineup today for the Bruins, who's of course, they're arguably their best player next to Brad Marchand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Pasternak's a guy that his numbers aren't where you would expect them to be, but if you look up and down the Bruins roster, guys, there's a lot of guys that aren't having great years. Like I was looking at the stats, and Charlie McAvoy's a guy, obviously, selected to Team USA for the Four Nations tournament. His numbers are down. Obviously, Marchand and Pastrnak, their numbers are exactly where you'd want them to be. But you're right, Drew. I mean, he's he's the type of guy, especially if the Bruins are on the power play. Oh wait, the Bruins have the 32nd power play.
The worst power play in the NHL.
No, but I mean, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see if Scott Arniel wants the Lowry line against the Zaka, Geeky, Pastrnak line. That's the line that Pastrnak usually plays on, and then the second line of Lindholm. I don't know if you call that. I would probably call that the Bruins' top line with Lindholm, Justin Brazeau, and Brad Marchand. Brazeau's a very interesting guy. I wanted to bring him up, Dave, because if you remember, he played several years with the Providence Bruins, the AHL affiliate of the Boston Bruins, of course, long-time AHL affiliate of the Bruins. He's from New Lisker, Ontario, undrafted, and he's got 7 goals on the season. So a really good story for him, because I might be wrong about this, but I think at 26 years old, he might still be eligible for the Calder because he played less than 20 games last year. So Brazeau's a guy that's third on the Bruins in scoring. Just thought I'd bring that up because he's obviously not a household name for Jets fans. So Brazeau's a guy playing with Brad Marchand and Elias Lindholm on the first line or second line, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure. I don't watch enough Bruins to know if that's the first line or the second line, but regardless, the Bruins are playing better, guys. They're getting that Joe Sacco new head coach bump.
Four
We're
wins in a row.
Four wins
playing
in
a
a
lot
row.
better hockey lately.
Yeah, 4 wins in a row for the Bruins, 7-2 since Joe Sacco took over as the interim head coach in Boston. So, it's funny, you talk about a championship pedigree. You talk about, teams and organizations that have that, championship culture. The Bruins make that coaching change, and usually coaching changes this early are made when, a team is really struggling, like we saw with Chicago, or they're just not progressing anywhere. And there's a lot of talk about how the Bruins aren't off to the great start, and they're struggling, and they're not, and there's a lot, I think, of areas of concern for the Boston Bruins. If you look at their goal differential,
Minus
it's something
13.
like, minus 12,
minus 13.
Okay, minus 13. So not great by any stretch of the imagination, but lo and behold, they're still third in the Atlantic Division.
I'm wrong, minus 12.
Thank you. It was minus 12. I knew that.
I just never got the feeling that I was never counting the Boston Bruins out, guys.
No,
That's just what the Bruins do. They make the playoffs every single year.
Yeah.
That's just what they do. And obviously, over the years, they've lost some key players, namely Patrice Bergeron,
Yes.
One of the best centers of all time. But I and again, this might be me speculating here a little bit, but I don't think that whole Jeremy Swayman situation really helped them, especially with some new guys coming into the lineup. I'm not saying that that's the reason why the Bruins were struggling, but you go from
what you're saying about the situation, just for those in the audience who might not be aware, is it took him a long time to sign his contract. It wasn't, he was a restricted free agent without any arbitration rights. So it took him a long time for him and the Bruins to come together on the terms for a new contract.
He didn't sign until, I believe, like midway through training camp or towards the end of training camp, right?
That's
And
right.
obviously, Dave Swayman's been better lately. Another guy on this roster named to Team USA, along with Charlie McAvoy for the Four Nations tournament, right? So Swayman's still an excellent goaltender. He's been better as of late, but he's still not the shutdown Swayman from last year. So when you factor in all these things, guys, yes, the Bruins are playing better, but this is not a team that is firing like they were on all cylinders a couple of years ago when they had 125 points or whatever they had. Power play is struggling. They're struggling to score goals. We talked about it. Obviously, Marchand and Pasternak, they're getting it done, but I mean, some of these veteran players like Pavel Zacha, Charlie Coyle, I think, has 2 goals this year.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that, this is a team that, is still, even though they're getting that coach bump, I still think they're fragile to a certain degree.
Well, it's funny because Adam Lowry had a very good response when he was talking about Pasternak and how good he is. And he just basically said, I appreciate watching him playing against other teams, just not against us. But as Drew said, and I agree.
Tells you the respect that they have for him as an opponent.
But you're going to see a lot of the Adam Lowry line tonight. There's no question about it. So we can quibble over the first, second, third lines, but I think from a minutes perspective, which I think ultimately decides that, I suspect Lowry's line is going to be up there because they're going to be charged with shutting down some of the best of the Bruins. And the one thing that stands out about Boston, and I'm like, as he says, I don't watch any of the Bruins games. I'm not going to pretend to have any sort of tremendous insight into Boston.
Well, you're too busy watching every single OHL prospect of the Jets team.
That's a fair point. And WHL.
You're the new OHL insider.
And no, not OHL. Come on, I'm not limited. I'm not a bias. I'm more of a Western guy than an Eastern guy. But ultimately, the thing that stands out, though, it's one thing you mentioned, Desi, it's that their power play is so bad.
They spend a lot of time practicing power play this morning at morning skate.
Sure, but what I was going to say, though, from a Jets perspective, remember the Jets penalty kill was like, I think 11th overall, slipped to about 19th, then moved up to about 16th, and now they're back at 19th, I think. And the Bruins PK is 20th. So neither team has a tremendous one, but if you're the Jets and you want your PK to have a little optimism, well, playing against a 32nd ranked power play you don't want to take penalties, but maybe this gives you a little bit of impetus. And as assistant coach Dean Chenoweth talks about, it gives you that boost, right? Because he says you don't want it to just kill the momentum. You want to be able to draw something from a successful penalty kill.
It's certainly an issue, an area of concern for the Jets as of late. The penalty kill and the power play itself hasn't been. They got a power play goal on Sunday against Columbus.
2 for 15.
Well,
since Nikolai Ehlers is out there, their power play is 2 for 15. And since Dylan Sandberg is out, the PK is taking a hit. I mean, you can see it's crazy to think, and we always talk about that hockey is not a one guy sport, but you see the impact of Nikolai Ehlers, kind of obviously how it trickles down, right? Cole Perfetti better suited on that second pairing just to play that style, and then so you've got to get hit second pairing, second unit.
Yeah.
He comes up, doesn't necessarily fit that way the first unit plays, and then similarly, like I said, you lose Dylan Sandberg on the PK.
Look, you talk about Cole Perfetti. I mean, he's a guy who needs to give the Jets more. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, at this,
I would agree with that.
At this stage of his career, and I know he's still a young player, but he needs to give the Jets more because you can't you can't play in a team's top 6 or be counted on, you know, to be a key member of a team and then disappear for large chunks at a time, like we've seen him do. You know, and it was one thing last year when it happened and Rick Bowness sat him down and he wasn't a regular in the lineup. It's another thing this year where Scott O'Neill has done nothing but really try and boost him up and give him all the praise and make him feel as though he's, you know, a key member of this team and a key driver of this team's success. And there's been too many games this year where he's just disappeared and he hasn't been able to make an impact. And, you know, so you know, he himself knows this. I'm not telling anybody anything that he, you know, himself
There he is.
isn't
Let's bring
aware
him in.
of.
Cole, Drew has something to tell you. Hold on one second. Cole Perfetti, everyone.
Yeah. But, you know, they need more from him, especially with that second line the way it is with Chibrikov, you know, still, you know, such a young player. Vlad Nemesnikov, you know, again, truthfully, you know,
He's ideally suited to be your 4C. There's no,
Right.
I mean, you can dance around it, and he's admirably filled in. I don't think there's anybody who would question what he's been able to do.
Right.
But
there's
ultimately,
a reason why last year they went out and got Sean Monahan and bumped him down.
and again, Eddie, isn't he best as your 4C? Like, doesn't your team look so much deeper with Vlad Nemesnikov as your 4C?
Well,
Yes.
and that's why his versatility is so impressive because he can literally in game go from a 2C to a 4C, and you know what.
But he's
exactly
not going to
what you're
drive
gonna-
that line on his
No,
own.
no,
So he
and-
needs somebody to be there with him, you know,
Right.
pushing forward, and that has to be Cole Perfetti.
Yes.
And he hasn't done it enough as of late.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Drew. And again, anybody who listens to our Saturday morning show or any of our post-game shows know that we're big fans. We're very high on Cole Perfetti. Like, he's got a very high ceiling. 70 points at the NHL level. Like, I think his ceiling is that high. I think he's
I
going
need to see more for him to be able to get up to those numbers as a.
No, it's fair. Last 5 games, no points. It was the game against Vegas where he had the couple goals, and those were his first goals in a while.
Yeah.
So this is struggles that have been going on for a month now, over a month. And you're right. And Dave talks about missing Nikolai Ehlers on the power play, but it's more so at 5-on-5, I think. And even though, I mean, the power play guys, that was a huge part of the reason why the Jets were 15-1 to start the season, right? It seemed like the Jets were scoring not just one power play goal a game. It seemed like they were scoring a couple power play goals a game, right, Dave?
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, not having Ehlers there, but if you want to look at this, like, you know, I always like to step back and look at this from a macro level, right, guys? When you don't have Ehlers in the lineup, it affects your special teams. It affects the driving force on your second line. Not having Sandberg in the lineup, obviously, I mean, I've said this before. I think Sandberg, after Morrissey, is the best defenseman on the team. I'm probably higher on Slamberg than some, but I love his game. I just think he's exactly what you want in a second pairing left shot defenseman. And so when you have 2 key players like that out of the lineup, other players have to step up. And like Drew is trying to say here, Cole Perfetti might only be 22 years old, but he's obviously been given this top 6 spot for a reason, right? Not only did the Jets draft him 10th overall, but he's got the skill set. He can produce. We talked about it. He had a couple goals against Vegas. He has this ability. He scored goals at the NHL level. He's got to find a way to get to the middle of the ice. He's got to find a way to create those high danger chances. Obviously, him and Nemesnikov feed well.
2 goals in the last 14 games.
Right. Oh,
for
there's
Cole
no doubt.
Perfetti.
There's no doubt, Drew, that he's struggling, and you hate to see it, right? Because obviously, guys, Perfetti, his first half of the season last year was quite different between the second half of the season and the first half of the season, right?
Right.
We know that he was struggling, and he found himself a healthy scratch and everything like that, right, guys? So this is a big game for the Jets. Like, obviously, boys, the Jets group is tired. Like, there's no doubt about that. The 10 games in 17 days, all the road games, everything like that. So hopefully Nikita Chibrikov gives you a boost in the lineup. Hopefully David Gustafson, a.k.a. Gus Bus, he gives you a boost, gives you some energy. We know what he can do. He's a very reliable center, a very reliable forward. So hopefully he goes in there and he basically replaces what Kupari gives you. Obviously not as fast of a player, maybe not as high of a ceiling as Kupari. But I think that what you're hoping out of Chibrikov, he gives you a little bit more of an edge. And this Bruins team, guys, they're always going to have an edge. I realize this isn't the big bad Bruins of the 1970s.
Right.
But whenever Brad Marchand's in there, you know that he's going to be causing a havoc, and you know it's going to be a big test for the Jets. But you're absolutely right. Perfetti's a guy that you hope that he breaks out tonight because it's been going, like we said, this has been going on 13 or 14 games now.
North-south is the direction the Jets need to play in tonight's contest against the Boston Bruins, and they want to turn their trajectory back north as opposed to the south trajectory that they've been trending in as of late. When we come back on this special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, more on the Jets and the Bruins. We'll look at the changes to the back end as well, as we have changes there to discuss. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, we're live downtown Winnipeg at Cityplace for this special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. Cityplace is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make Cityplace your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit Cityplace at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of the hour, 12:30 in the afternoon. Welcome back to the special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, live on location at Cityplace. Thrilled to always be here. I know Mr. Ginsburg to my right is at this point in time, he's eyeballing what he's going to have for lunch right afterwards. He's checking out his options here at the food court at Cityplace. He's considering the downstairs options as well. He's deep in contemplative thought right now. You might think it's about the Jets. You might think he's doing his internal analysis. Instead, he's doing his internal analysis of his lunch hour options is what
Drew,
he's doing.
you set this whole operation up just so I could hit every single restaurant in the food court in under an hour.
You're single-handedly keeping all these businesses even more afloat than all the good people who are listening to us here live at Cityplace.
Sir, we'll just put a garbage bag full of Timbits in the back door and just please leave.
It's like he's a raccoon, folks, is what he is. He's a rabid raccoon, but he's a human being instead. Additional changes, Dave Minuk, to the Winnipeg Jets back end. Now, these ones are similar to what we've seen as of late, and really not... I think, the surprise aspect of it, or the point that was going to be worth watching was it going to be Ville Heinola in for Logan Stanley and Colin Miller stays in the lineup? Or is it going to be Ville Heinola back in the lineup on the right side and Colin Miller moves out? And that ends up being the answer. Logan Stanley stays in. He's the left side, third pairing defenseman for the Winnipeg Jets in tonight's game. And then Ville Heinola returns after having Sunday off for load management purposes, as that would have been the third and 4 nights for him. Instead, Colin Miller is out of the Jets lineup, and Ville Heinola is going to be playing on the right side. They spoke about it, and so far the Jets are trying to give this pairing as much runway as they possibly can. For better or worse, I suppose, would be the follow-up comment at that point. But nice to see Ville Heinola back in the lineup at the very least for the Winnipeg Jets, albeit on his offside.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, he's in the NHL, and he's playing games in the NHL, and that's what you want. And we kind of expected this, right, boys? The fact that you were going to have a guy who, as I said recently on one of our broadcasts, he didn't play a lot of hockey in the last 2 months. Yeah. Missed all of training camp, missed the beginning of the season. Sure, but I'm saying that. But he closed out the AHL season with the Moose, so that wasn't an issue last year, I'm saying. So this year he goes to get those 2 games of conditioning, which I didn't think were going to be enough for him to get him up to the NHL level and get him going. They weren't. And so the coaching staff has made a plan, and that's fine. Obviously they had an idea in their head as how many games they wanted him to play in the AHL, and then obviously, let's put it this way. This isn't news to Ville Heinola. The coaching staff would have kept him up to date as to how they were going to proceed with him, similar to the way they do with the goaltending. They say, okay, this is kind of our plan, and this is essentially the structure of what the schedule is going to look like for your games. So from a Ville Heinola perspective, do you want to play every game? For sure, but I just suspect that the team doesn't want to take any risks with him. They want to kind of keep him relatively fresh as best they can and put him in the greatest path for success. That's the most important part, right, guys, is that you want him to have success. You don't want to put him in similar to what we're talking about with Brad Lambert. I understand that Ville Heinola is an older player than Brad Lambert, but what I'm saying is it's that idea as if you don't want to do something that's going to damage a guy. You want the guy available to play in March, in April, in May, in June. In theory, I understand that some folks don't think Ville Heinola is capable of being a defenseman in the playoffs, and that's your prerogative to have that opinion. But we've
never seen it.
That too, but also we're a long time away from the playoffs. Like, I always find it funny when we're in early December and we're talking about the playoffs, right, guys? Like, we're not even halfway through the season here. But you're absolutely right, Dave. I think that the goal here is not just to get Heinola into a few games here. The plan is to have Heinola as your third pairing defenseman. Let's not forget that was the plan even as far back as last year, right? So obviously the results have been mixed between Heinola and Stanley. As a pair, we've talked about that, but it's almost, guys, like we should trademark like a drinking game, like what's the third pair going to be today for the Jets, right? Like, it's like, is it going to be Colin Miller? Is it going to be Dylan Coghlan? Heinola? Is it going to be Logan Stanley, right? Like, obviously, nobody has necessarily taken that job and ran with it, right? But I think that, you're hoping that it's a better performance than some of the games that we've seen between Heinola and Stanley. It's been a little bit chaotic, I would say, with the turnovers in their own zone, right? But I mean, if they are able to, like, I still think, guys, and I think, producer Tim would agree with me, and most Jets fans would agree that the obvious D pair for the Jets on that third pair is Heinola and Colin Miller. Yeah. That just makes the most sense because that's obviously Heinola is a natural left shot defenseman. Miller's proven to be a very solid third pairing defenseman. Like, how many games has he's got, 500 games of NHL experience, something like that? Yeah. Like, he's played a lot of hockey, and I think he's been good. And we talked to Mike McIntyre on the Saturday show. You could make an argument that, Dylan Coghlan deserves a little bit more time in the top 4. But I definitely think, guys, top 6. Yeah. But the switch between Neil Pionk and Dylan DeMello, I think, can't go understated. I really do think that has brought out more or has stabilized Hayden Fleury a little bit. And I think, Dylan Samberg, we don't think he's going to be back for at least, 2 or 3 more weeks. So for the time being, guys, what we're still seeing is the game that I was talking about, who's going to really step up and take that third pairing role. Because for me, it should be Heinola and Miller, but for whatever reasons, right now, we're seeing Heinola and Stanley, and that's, the most recent contestants on, the third pair is right, whatever the game is we're calling.
What you're going to see, I mean, and you look at the bottom of the Bruins lineup, the bottom of the forward group for the Boston Bruins, and it's really, with all due respect to them, of course, it's nothing to write home about.
Careful, Drew. They could be walking through
I know,
here momentarily.
they very well.
Get in those shots quickly before
Well, I told Brad Marchand to get here at like 12:30 to choke Drew. I already used that joke on Timmy, but so I don't know where he is.
No, he didn't laugh. Nobody laughed at these jokes. But the point is that obviously they're going to try. The Jets are going to try and shelter their minutes as they have been trying to do,
especially at home.
Yeah, especially at home, you should be able to do that as much as possible, and you should be. And so you want to see sort of an improved performance from them. You want to see sort of steps in the right direction. You want to see positive steps forward that can give you some reason to believe, as opposed to just hoping and praying that that's a viable third pair. I mean, we haven't seen it just yet. Not to say it won't materialize. I'm skeptical, as I think anybody that's listened to any of our programming knows that I'm skeptical on the long-term success of it. But you'd want to see it particularly in a game like tonight, where you're on home ice, you get last change, you get the opportunity to do your matchups as best as you possibly can. So you should want to be able to see that line sort of have some success against maybe bottom six opponents, as opposed to on the road where the other coach gets the choice of line matchup at that point, Dave.
That's true, and again, that would go to the idea of you're testing things out. But at a certain point,
you have to give up on the testing.
You have to give up on the testing, and you have to say, listen, in a playoff series, you can do that 2 games out of the 4 to start the series. Now, the reality is, are you going to start doing it so you're only playing them as a home pairing, not as an away pairing because you're afraid? Again, I think this is all part of the evaluation process. I really do. And I simply think that you've got an organization that is evaluating these players. And so you're going to have to evaluate them, sure, in sheltered minutes to a degree, Drew, but also you have to evaluate them against stiffer competition sometimes and see what they're able to do.
Well, I think we know the answer to that.
Sure.
Is the problem. And to your point, or to the point we were talking about in the first half of this show, as we're live here at Cityplace in downtown Winnipeg, a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. But you also need to see improved special teams performance. Especially from a guy like Logan Stanley. And again, I don't want him to be the whipping boy, because we've done that. We've commented enough on that. But there needs to be somebody needs to step up in the absence of Dylan Sandberg and improve that penalty kill, because that's been struggling as of late for the Winnipeg Jets, which means the reads have to be better. I go back to the to some of the problems on Sunday against Columbus, and you had guys just who looked out of place and out of sorts and confused as to who they should be matching up with. Oh my gosh! You got to come over and say hello to the good people, Paulie. Paulie Edmonds, voice of the Winnipeg Jets.
And let's not forget former Winnipeg Jet.
Walk on. He's doing a cameo here, is what he's doing.
I love this setup. It's a great
setup.
No,
Paul, look, you got a mic.
Use that mic.
And Paulie, right in front of you was former Winnipeg Jets 1.0 goaltender and Bob Essenza, so pretty cool.
Bob.
Yeah. Hold on, let's turn the
Obviously,
channel.
you're more important than Bob Essenza.
As he shift over a little bit.
There.
Okay, thanks.
There you go. Hi, Paulie.
Oh, you need your microphone.
No, I guess I need the microphone too. I'm a professional.
How's it going?
Here. Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah.
That's good.
Just came over. No lunch today, so it's kind of one of those days where you get to go and buy something and support the local patrons, right?
That's good.
Paulie, Drew can at least give you his chair.
I could.
Oh, no, it's all good.
Yeah, but I could theoretically, but I'm not going to, because I'm not that kind of guy.
I'm not going to be here for long enough either.
I knew that was also the option. How are things? How was the road trip? You were on the road for a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of ridiculous,
a
but
little bit.
everybody's going through it because of the Four Nations face-off and the compressed schedule. You played 2 home games in 4 weeks. It was tough, and I think you see the results of what had gone on with this team and some of the mistakes they were making, and from that standpoint, you understand it. I mean, they didn't ever want to use fatigue as an excuse, but how can it not be part of the reality of what you're living in when you're exhausted? And I think the one that really got everybody, I can talk about this because I know how I felt, and then sort of doing a bit of a straw poll, was the flight from Minnesota after that win to Los Angeles overnight. I think we all got into bed. It was like 5 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Pacific. And that just kind of wrecked everybody for several days after that. So, you go through those kind of situations and you can feel it. You know what they're going through because you're feeling it and you don't even play, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens tonight. They should be a little bit more rested after a day off, and big Bruins team coming in. And
it's always fun it's always a fun broadcast, always a fun game when there's an original 6 opponent, right?
Indeed. I mean, there'll be lots of Bruins jerseys in the crowd.
Yeah.
And, I think here's the Bruins starting a road trip, a long one. I mean, they go to Seattle and then Vancouver and then the 2 Alberta teams. And the Jets are coming off 2 straight losses at home. So by these 2 sort of teams colliding based in what's kind of at stake, I think it's going to be a really good game today.
And there you go. Okay, Paul, go have lunch.
Okay.
Here you go.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Here's some money. Here's some money for lunch. Thanks for your appearance on the show today.
Paul,
we just have to grease him a $20 bill every time he pops by.
Paul, that's actually not that funny because I drove here from St. James and I didn't have my wallet, so I'm currently parked, not having paid, and Drew had to buy me this McDonald's coffee. So literally, Drew did have to lend me $20.
The difference is I'm going to give you 20. I'm going to give him $1.50, and I'm going to demand it back before he goes away. You
with
can keep
interest.
The 20.
This is like $40 an hour for me then.
I was going to say.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
That's how important you are to us.
Great setup.
Thank you. There he goes, Paulie Edmonds, pop on. You never know who's going to do a walk-on on the Illegal Curve, special edition of the Illegal Curve
Well,
hockey
Drew,
show.
I had a question about Nikita Chibrikov for Paulie, and you didn't even let me ask it. So what's going on here?
He's got, you know what, the poor guy wanted to grab some lunch. I didn't want to take up too much of his
Dave
time.
loves me, but he doesn't love me that much.
In any event,
we should have had Bobby Essens jump in on as well. The entire Bruins brain trust was walking by. I think they were a little worried we were going to call them out. And to be honest with you, with all due respect to the Bruins, the only one we were interested in was great save Bob.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been.
I was going to say, all I want to say is great save, Essenza.
There you go, Kurt Gilbach. Shout out to him. We've got everything going on here. We're live at the Cityplace food court in downtown Winnipeg, talking about the Jets and the Boston Bruins ahead of tonight's original 6 matchup, the second of this 4-game homestand for the Winnipeg Jets. Vegas in on Thursday, and then again the Montreal Canadiens on Saturday. So an exciting stretch of home games for a team that has had so many away games over the last.
Yeah, it's enough with the away games. That was too much.
I think Frederick's trying to buy IC, but once again, Frederick being generous, second broadcast in a row. So thank you, Frederick, for making a donation to IC.
That's very
it's unnecessary, but we appreciate it.
Yes. Well, I need that. I'm going to have a parking ticket.
Oh, so maybe that's why
that's going to me, boys. Sorry.
Well, you're not going to have a car, so Frederick, Ezzy would need a car more than a...
Exactly. If somebody can take Ezzy to the impound lot, because I know Dave and I have no desire to do either of those 2 things.
I'll use it for a bus pass, whatever.
Yeah, there you go. Tonight's post.
Thank you,
show.
Frederick.
Yeah, it's very generous, of course, Frederick. 2 shows in a row, totally unnecessary, but very much appreciated. We're live here at Cityplace, downtown Winnipeg. We do this each and every month, talking about the Winnipeg Jets ahead of a big home game like they have tonight against the Boston Bruins. You know, the Jets. Sunday was such a disappointing result, and that you need to see, I think, everybody have that focus to step up. And I think it was last year where they played the Bruins on home ice that the Jets really had an impressive performance.
That was the late December game.
That's right.
That was that crazy game. What was the final score? It's like 5-1. It was like
it was a very one-sided game.
It was like late. It was like the 3rd week of December, and the Jets went bananas.
Yeah, the Jets had a very impressive effort on home ice against the Bruins last year, about 12 months ago, maybe 11 and a half months ago, give or take. And you want to see a similar result tonight. You want to see the Jets have that jump. You want to see them be able to come out of the gates, with that energy that they didn't necessarily have on Sunday night. And they've talked a good game as of late about needing to go more north-south. And when we saw it in that first period against Columbus, the number of times they overpassed the puck. And that's, that has to be out of their game tonight, because that's not going to be a recipe for success. Recipe for success for this team. Again, the Bruins, good in terms of where they are in the standings. A lot of their numbers and a lot of their sort of underlying numbers would say that they're outperforming in the win-loss column than they are in terms of their actual results. A -12 goal differential, one of the bottom power play units in the league. They don't score a lot of goals. They give up too many goals. A lot of things to say that there's concern for Boston's success at this point in time. But, whatever it is, the Jets need to be able to capitalize on that and do it early on in today's game, to really, I think, gain that momentum necessary.
Of course, and, I would agree with that even more, except for the fact that the Jets have gotten behind in so many games this year, and they managed just to have an unbelievable 3rd period, and then they win the game, right, Drew? But I think especially...
not the last few times where they've been tied going into the 3rd period. They were tied in the 3rd period, on Sunday against Columbus, against Dallas, against Vegas. They've lost those games in regulation.
Absolutely. It's something that a trend that unfortunately we've seen in the last 10 or 12 games that we weren't seeing during that incredible 15-1 run, right? So you're absolutely right. And I think it's more so because of the fact that the Jets were just kind of flat for... The second period wasn't bad. I think the second period was you would say, similar to what we've come to expect from the Jets, but certainly the first and third periods, which is obviously 2/3 of the game, guys, were not very good. And obviously, I heard a little bit of the post-game show when Dave was talking about, if that power play had scored in that first period, or at the very least given them a little bit more momentum. And Gabe Velarde did have that incredible chance where Merzlikins made that incredible, it was a kind of right pad skate save, right? So, I mean, they did get some decent looks, and then obviously Kyle Connor had the rocket later in the game, but I think that you're absolutely wanting a better start. And we know that the Bruins are going to have a lot of fans in the stands, so you don't want to get down 1-0. You don't want to get down a couple goals. I mean, it goes without saying, guys, that you're going to feed off of the first goal most likely, whichever team scores the first goal, right, in terms of the momentum swings and everything like that. But I think I'm looking at it more like, Drew, you need to have a more complete game. The Jets, I think, with the exception of maybe, I don't know, the game against Pittsburgh, like it's been a while, guys, since we've seen, a complete victory here. Like even in the win against Chicago, I mean, that was not pretty. The Jets were the much better team, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think that, there were parts of that game.
The last game that they dominated was that Pittsburgh
And that's
game.
what I'm talking about, right? Like, I think, we always talk about process versus results, Dave, right? And this is obviously a results-based business, but it's also about the process because, as Drew mentioned, you got the Golden Knights coming in, the Golden Knights and Jets, we know the rivalry. It goes back to the first Golden Knights season, and then you're going to have Montreal on Sunday. It's about getting those good feelings back and starting to play more consistently like we've seen from the Jets for so many games this season, right? So I think you're hoping that the changes that you're making are going to provide that necessary energy boost and hopefully some offense, right? Like, it's not like, Dave, they're just hoping that Nikita Chibrikov goes in there, has a couple body checks, provides a little bit of energy. They want him to produce on that second line.
And they need him to produce because one of the things...
Nobody else is.
Yeah, and you need, again, like, regardless of where what line they are, obviously, like, ultimately, at the end of the day, Perfetti, Nemestikov, and Chibrikov aren't there to hold water. You need them to put the puck in the back of the net.
Right. They're not just placeholders. It's not. They can't be. The
No.
Jets need performers in that top six.
Well, I mean, like, ultimately, remember, what did we talk about? We said you can't just have a top six. You need a top nine that produces. Well, the Lowry line has been producing. The Scheifele line is producing. Now, again, both have gone a little bit colder as a result of the whole team kind of coming back down to earth. And the one thing I would always say, and this is just the reality, is that the Jets coming back down to earth, they're still one of the top teams in the NHL. From a standings perspective, because
first team to get to 20 wins in the league.
That's my point. The point is that they've afforded themselves this hiccup, this bump, and so you want to see how they're going to work themselves out of it. And one of the things that you need them to work out is, again...
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off there.
No,
I was just indicating to Drew that I had some numbers that I wanted to bring up, courtesy of our buddy Connor Hrabchak.
Okay.
Let Dave finish his thought, and then you can bring up your numbers.
Nah, bring up your numbers now. I've lost my thought.
That's what I didn't want to happen. I wasn't trying to distract you there, Dave. No, I mean, Connor posted this, I think, in his last article, or he posted this on X, and I just wanted to mention the 5-on-5 offense for the Jets, because to me, I mean, and for many teams in the NHL, this is the key. Obviously, we've talked about the special teams. Obviously, you'd like to get some more production from the power play. But in these last 9 games, goals per 60, the Jets are 31st in the NHL at 1.5. Expected goals per 60, 2.2, 26th in the NHL. I mean, I could go through these numbers, but scoring chances per 60.
The point is the offense is dried up.
Yeah, Corsi per 60 is 22nd in the NHL. High endanger chances per 60, a little bit better, 19th in the NHL with 9.9. High danger chances per 60. But the reality is, guys, they've got to get the even strength offense going. You've got to get it going from multiple lines, right? Like the Scheifele, Connor Velarde line, they're obviously, you know what you're going to get on most nights from that line. Obviously, they've got to improve a little bit the way they've been playing defensively. But to me, it's that second line. It's the key. So I'm really fascinated to see what Chibrikov can bring, because Chibrikov, let's be honest, like, he's a little bit overshadowed by Brad Lambert in terms of prospects that ready for the NHL in the Jets system, right?
I don't think anybody thought that Chibrikov would necessarily come right up into the lineup, Dave, into a top 6 role. They doesn't, Brad Lambert, immediately you think speed, you think skill, you think high-end talent. But Chibrikov, that isn't necessarily what is the first thing that comes to mind for most people who haven't watched him as much as you have.
Sure, I think it shows a philosophical change from what we've seen in the past, which is, as I mentioned earlier in this broadcast, okay, you got a top 6 guy who gets injured, Alex Iafallo or Rasmus Kupari gets elevated, and then you just bring up a guy from the Moose, and the guy from the Moose goes and plays on that 4th line. like I said, you're seeing guys, they're saying, okay, well, this is a skill guy, a guy who plays, 20 minutes for the Manitoba Moose. Again, I'm not going to suggest that the AHL is the same as the NHL. It's not, obviously.
But he's counted on to produce at the AHL level.
That's right. And he's trusted in all. Like, look, Nikita Chibrikov, boys, was second power play, giving second power play minutes today. So
I think your point is a good one. Sorry for interrupting, because in years past, if the Jets would have an injury situation like this, who would be the first guy called up typically? Somebody like
Tony Nato.
Tony Nato or Axel Jonsson-Fialbi.
Yeah.
Guys who
Patrice Cormier.
Guys who can come in and maybe play a limited role in the bottom of your lineup. Now the Jets are, to your point, I think are taking those skill guys at the AHL level, those high-end producers at the AHL level, and saying, you now go get an opportunity to be a high-end producer at the NHL level.
That's exactly what they're doing. And that's what you want to see, because, like, why would you take a guy who is player X and try and make him a player Y at the NHL level? It doesn't make any sense. And it just changes. It just philosophically destroys kind of your plan for these guys. And that's what Scott O'Neill talked about, is that they don't want to have these guys come up and they don't want to kill their confidence. They want to create an environment where they have success. Mm-hmm. And through having that success, whether it's on a short-term basis or a little bit longer, because again, right now, I don't anticipate that it's going to be like that these guys are taking over a major role as for the rest of the season. But the point is, you want to set them up so, as the head coach's own words, they'll have success in the NHL for years to come. And I think that he knows that, look, Brad Lambert's going to go back to the Moose. He's going to play big minutes tonight in Calgary. Nikita Chibrikov's going to get a chance to come up and make an impact. And then when Nikolai Ehlers is ready to go, I suspect Nikita Chibrikov, because he doesn't fit philosophically what that fourth line is going to go back down to the Moose and hopefully keep producing. And whether he gets some goals here or not, I still suspect it doesn't change what the organization is planning on doing.
Well, I look at a team like the Dallas Stars last year, where they bring in, maybe
Logan Stankoven,
and Maverick Bork, skill guys, and they come in later on in the year, and they sort of change the philosophy of the organization. They add those guys as skill players, and maybe instead of relying on more, grinders or more, checkers at the bottom of your lineup, you bring in some skill guys who performed at the AHL level. I wonder if this is the Jets maybe, to some extent, test driving that philosophy, giving these guys a little bit of a taste. Here's a little sprinkle. You're at the NHL level for a few games here. You're at the NHL level for a few games there. Now you're back at the AHL level when you're fully healthy. But this carrot is sitting there that maybe come the end of the season, the end of the regular season, the start of the playoffs, you guys get called up and you play a more offensive role for the Winnipeg Jets. I wonder if there's sort of a groundwork being laid for that to maybe occur later on this year.
You nailed it, Drew. This is a golden opportunity for Chibrikov, and also I think, an opportunity again to change the dynamic a little bit of that second line, because yes, Chibrikov or Lambert playing on the second line, they're only in the lineup because of the Ehlers injury. They're placeholders, for lack of a better term,
right?
Because we know that when Ehlers comes back, he immediately goes on the wing on that second line, right? So great opportunity, as Dave said, and as Drew mentioned, for Chibrikov here. I'm really excited, and I know a lot of people watching, a lot of people in the chat, listening on the podcast, people that are going to be at the game, watching the game at home, are very excited for Chibrikov, because the Jets haven't necessarily had a prospect like him in a while, right? That kind of dual threat. Like and that's the thing, Dave, you can speak to this more, but Chibrikov's defensive game is also underrated. Like he's an overall very intriguing prospect to me. And again, we're not going to put too much pressure on him, even though Dave M did guarantee Chibrikov's going to score a hat trick tonight. but I mean, it's going to be exciting, and the Jets need a boost, and I think the effort will be much better. I do think that the Jets are going to put together. I'm not going to obviously guarantee a win, because it would mean nothing.
Your guarantees are the worst.
It's got to be a lot better of a performance from the Jets.
Yes.
And like you really hated to see the lack of run support for Eric Comrie. He made that incredible glove save on Sean Monahan.
Yeah.
So obviously Hellbuck's going to be back in net, and I do think the Jets want to get back into their winning ways. They definitely, and Dave was there today, they were not happy with how they performed against Columbus.
It's something we'll talk about later on tonight after the Jets and the Bruins on the Illegal Curve post-game show that happens after each and every Winnipeg Jets game. Be sure to join us live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms platforms for that. For those of you here live at Cityplace in the food court wondering, how do we get more of a legal curve? How do we hear more from those three handsome gentlemen? All you need to do is scan the QR code that's on the giant poster behind us, Google Illegal Curve Hockey, and you will find us live on our YouTube channel. You'll find our website. You'll find our Facebook page. You'll find our X page. You'll find our Blue Sky page. You'll find everything to do.
Go to our link tree. It's got everything.
There you go.
That's a little bit easier. Go to our link tree, and that will link. It's a tree that links you to all of IC's social media.
Sure, that's one way to go about it. Always great broadcasting here live at Cityplace. We do this on a monthly basis live from the food court here. We're next back at it January the 14th, Tuesday, January the 14th. So we'll see you back here at Cityplace for another edition, another special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're looking forward to that. Thanks to all of you for joining us here live at Cityplace. If you haven't already done so, again, if you're watching online, if you're watching wherever you may be streaming from, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, smash the like button, all those good things. We do that. We'd like to do that for. We appreciate you doing that. Is what I'm trying to say as I stumble over my words.
Seizure right now?
No, I'm okay. I think I got it. Big thanks to everybody for joining us here. Big thanks to everyone for joining us online. Big thanks to producer Tim for doing a great job as always in making this show as smooth as it is. We'll see you later tonight after the Jets and the Bruins. For Dave Manouk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Big thanks to our friends at Cityplace. This has been a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.